Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the polls are generally uncertain on how the nation will vote on June the 23rd, but as we get closer to that date, more are coming out, including some this morning and another one later on today. And our Joe Coe has been taking a look.
Yes, after the fiasco of last year's general election, there's been a lot more attention paid in this campaign to polling methodology. Phone polls have most frequently shown Remain with a lead, whereas online polls have tended to show the two sides neck and neck. Let's plot a very small number of the polls so far. Now, in the middle of May, an Ipsos Mori phone poll gave Remain an 18-point lead, by far the biggest in the campaign thus far. But signs that the tide may be turning somewhat emerged at the end of May, as an ICM poll gave Leave a 3-point lead. As we move towards the finish line, the picture has only grown more confused, with an online poll last week from Opinion giving Remain a 2-point lead. Only for the weekend to see a YouGov online survey placing Leave 1 point ahead. This week, a Comres telephone poll gave Remain a 1-point advantage. And this morning, Ipsos Mori released a poll showing the Leave side ahead by 6, excluding undecided voters. And before we came on air, a new poll from Survation was released, showing a swing to Leave, with 45% favouring out and 42% wanting to remain. 13% are still undecided. Well, we can talk now to John Curtis, President of the British Polling Council. So, John Curtis, let's just look at those two polls in a bit more detail. What do they tell us?
They tell us that now even phone polls are not sure that Remain are going to win, and that indeed perhaps Leave are now marginally favourites. We had Ipsos Mori this morning putting the Leave side on 53, Remain on 47. Now, in part, this was a consequence of changes in the methodology of that poll, but in part accepting a criticism that maybe the phone polls had Remain too high in the past, and also a change in the way in which they weighted their data. But even taking that into account, this poll was showing quite a substantial swing in favour of Leave. The poll that's just come out confirms that story. It's around a 5 to 6 point swing as compared with the same company's poll a month ago. And the truth is now that if you take the polls, the phone polls this week, they marginally put Leave ahead. The internet polls have also been putting Leave marginally ahead. The two kinds of polls may be converging to some degree, and they seem to be converging around a picture where Leave probably now have a narrow position of around 52-53% of the vote.
All right.
Which I think takes us to a crucial point, because, of course, one of the things that we're aware of about referendums is that they often overstate the appetite for change. We might think that some voters will go back towards Remain as they become concerned about the risk during the last week. But once Leave are at 52 or at 53 in the polls, I think we reach the point where we have to say that the Leave side have at least a 50% chance of winning.
Right, OK. Well, let's take that this is a turning point, as you are stating it. And if we believe the polls, as they are at the moment, what's leading to this shift in your mind towards Leave?
Well, the shift first begins to emerge in polling conducted after the 27th of May. What's magic about the 27th of May? That is the day when the official election period kicked in and when the UK government no longer had access to the resources of the British Civil Service. Prior to that, frankly, the Remain side were controlling the media agenda, were controlling what the debate was about, and were focusing the referendum on the issue of the economy and the alleged dire consequences that would flow from leaving. Since May the 27th, the Leave side have been at least the equal of the Remain side in getting their issues onto the agenda, and we've had occasions when Leave have been putting statements out and it's been Remain they've had to respond. So I think that's point one. Point two is, I think it's something that particularly emerged in polling at the weekend and again in this morning's Ipsos Mori poll, which is it looks as though that maybe the Remain side have over-egged the pudding in their claims about what would be the economic consequences of leaving. Only around 1 in 5 of us, for example, apparently believe that we will be £4,300 worse off by 2030, as claimed by George Osborne. More broadly, although many a voter thinks that maybe we will be worse off if we leave the EU, very few voters are convinced that we're going to be better off as a result of remaining. So it's very much a one-trick pony campaign, and it may be that that record has just begun to wear a bit too thin for too many voters.
Now, as we're getting very close, there haven't been many people willing to pin their colours to the mast in terms of the result. What's your prediction now?
Well, the answer to you is that, Joe, until this morning, I would have said to you that on the balance of probabilities, but no more than the balance of probabilities, Remain were the favourites. I think we no longer have a favourite in this referendum.
Right. And the balance of probabilities in terms of time to change, as you stated, you thought this was a sort of turning point. Is there much room for manoeuvre now, between now and next Thursday?
Well, sure, there certainly is a week to go. We know from the experience of other referendums, not least the Scottish independence referendum, that things can indeed turn again in the course of the last week. It's pretty clear in that referendum that support for yes did diminish by a couple of points or so in the course of the last week. If indeed Remain can get that advantage, then maybe they will still win. But shall we say, it looks as though if the polls are right at all, they now have to bank on that happening, because if it doesn't happen, there must be a serious possibility that we will vote to leave.
John Curtis, thank you very much. Well, Danny Finkelstein, do you agree with John Curtis that the Remain side over-egged the economic consequences of leaving the EU?
No, actually, I thought it was top-class analysis, and I will agree with his conclusions, including the way that he forecast and everything that he said about the polls. I didn't agree with that, though, because if you believe that leaving the European Union is a bad idea, you believe those economic consequences will follow. Lots of people think that it's just trying to scare people, and obviously the Remain side is trying to make these points as strongly as possible. But certainly one of my primary reasons for being in favour of Remain is I think the economic consequences will be severe. Now, Andrea obviously doesn't agree with that,
No,
and I respect her judgment a lot.
But do you think the emergency budget? Do you think the emergency budget idea backfired?
Well, I've no idea what other people's view of it. My own view is if we leave the European Union, the budgetary consequences in both the short and the long term will be serious, and that's the reason. And it's worthwhile sharing that judgment, which is also, the judgment of lots of other economists, with the electorate. Now, naturally, it's not the judgment of everybody, including people I work with and respect and like, but it is the judgment of the Remain campaign, and it's certainly my judgment, and correct to share it with voters.
Right. On the economy, I mean, do you accept there was a point at which the economic argument was won in broad terms by the Remain side, and immigration delivered much more of a swing towards leave?
Well, what I would accept is that the Remain camp were determined to make those the arguments. But no, I don't think the argument has been won on the economy. And in fact, what I would add to the reason why Leave are now improving our position is because people realise that actually remaining in the EU has massive risks to the economy. We're already the third biggest contributor. We will be the second biggest contributor. £10 billion a year, every year, that gets paid over that we don't see anything for. Right. And of course, their problems are going to end up being paid for by UK taxpayers. So people recognise if we stay in, actually, it's not going to be good for our public services or for our pockets.
Thank you very much, Andrea Leadsom. Not long to go now. I'll be saying that every day.
Do you not think you're going to
win?
Do you not think you're going to win?
Are we on air?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, the answer is yes or no. Do you think you're going to...
Oh, sorry, do I think we're going to? I think it's incredibly too close to call.
Okay.
We have to do everything.
No, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Too close to call. I'll
Still.
settle for that.
Okay.
Keeps us in a job anyway.